Hello, everyone. You're now tuned in to the Self Awareness Podcast. Um, I am so excited about this episode. This episode is called "What is Cognitive Dissonance?" So let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wellness Wednesday with the Self Awareness Podcast with your host, Summer B. The path to being able to discover yourself or change your habits all start with you. The Self Awareness Podcast purpose is to provide knowledge to achieving a healthy relationship with yourself so you can reach your fullest potential. This podcast is centered around how to convert your subconscious mind to your conscious mind to guide you to become more self aware. I will have special guests, interviews, and more. And for updates and reminders, please follow the podcast Instagram page at Self Aware Podcast and our Facebook page at Self Aware Podcast 1. And please don't forget to check out the link in the description below to be accessed for our website, our TikTok, and our YouTube. As well as you can also find the Instagram and Facebook there as well. And with all of that, let's get into the topic for our 21st episode. So, like I was saying earlier, today I want to focus on understanding cognitive dissonance and as well as focusing on the power that we have to create our own reality. So we're going to start off with this quote. "It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see," by Henry David Thoreau. And I also want to start off by asking you these three questions. Question 1. What is your core values? Question 2. How has your life experiences influenced how you think about things? And question 3. What is your mindset towards life? So yeah, I really suggest you think and reflect back on those questions. But let's go ahead and get into the topic. So you might be asking yourself, well, what is cognitive dissonance? Well, I'm glad you asked. So this was actually a phenomenon that was created by Leon Festinger. He was a well-renowned social psychologist. And I first came to the term of cognitive dissonance about 2021. And it helped me to learn how my current view towards things were different than what I was thinking about. So I'm going to define cognitive dissonance. So cognitive dissonance is an underlying psychological tension that is created when an individual's behavior is inconsistent with his or her thoughts or beliefs. And this underlying tension motivates an individual to make an attitude change that would produce consistency between these thoughts and behaviors. So for example, say somebody's smoking cigarettes or something, and they say, smoking cigarettes is very unhealthy for you, but they continuously smoke cigarettes knowing it's unhealthy. So then you have dissonance there because their thoughts are no longer aligned with their behaviors. So this can also look like, if you can picture like incongruence. So you have where you're congruent, everything's like making sense, it's working, your beliefs and your thoughts are all aligned. But when you're incongruent, it's like cracked. So I think of it something that helps like visualize it is you think of something's broken and you try to see like right through it, but you can't really see right through the cracks because it's like an altered reality type of thing. And typically when cognitive dissonance is occurring, there's three different defense mechanisms that may arise. So sometimes some things that can explain these incongruence or these your inconsistent thoughts slash behaviors is number one, avoiding the situation. Some people might try to protect themselves and just avoid thinking about it or distract themselves from it or try to cover up their true feelings or their true thoughts about it, and just completely just avoid it. So this is causing them to have this cognitive dissonance. Some people also like try to it's called delegitimizing. It's just another way of to create either discredit something based on the dissonance, saying that it's unworthy or biased. So they just try to say it's not legitimate. Um, as well as you have limiting impact. So this also involves kind of just claiming that whatever somebody's doing is rare, or providing like rational arguments to convince themselves or others that the behavior is okay. Um, so these are three different ways people try to resolve the inconsistency that they're feeling, but it also still is causing the psychological tension within themselves. So it's very important to try to restore that consistency, because then if you're constantly in this state of psychological tension, that's not that you're never going to reach your truest self. You're never going to really understand how you feel about certain things, understand why you react to certain things, just learn more about yourself, because you constantly have these defenses, um, and have a wall up. So if you can't even understand those things about yourself, about your emotions, how you're thinking, your core beliefs, how is that going to play a part into your interpersonal relationships then? How is that going to play a part into your work environment? Um, so on and so forth. So it's very important to always try to be in this congruent state. Sometimes, it can be really hard to break these habits, uncover, what are my values, uncover, are my thoughts even aligned with my values? Um, and sometimes people just kind of put on like they just don't care, and it can really, like I said, it gets in the way of understanding our truth, and also can be very physically uncomfortable and cause inner discomfort as well when you're in this state constantly. So the overall goal is to find a way to be consistent with your thoughts, your behaviors, and your emotions. And when you're in that stance, you'll be able to move through life in different life challenges differently, versus if you're always in this incongruent state. Because if something was to rise, you could just beat yourself up, or you can like try to make up reasons why you can continuously do unhealthy behaviors, and it can just really lead into like you never learning or growing from certain instances. So it's very important to not be in this cognitive dissonant state for very long. And if you are, let's learn how to, become more congruent. Um, Another thing that really influences cognitive dissonance is perception. You might be asking yourself, what is perception? So, perception can be defined as our recognition and interpretation of sensory information. Perception also allows us to take in the sensory information and make it into something meaningful. Um, in simpler terms, it basically means like, how do you perceive the world? How do you perceive certain things that are going on in the world? How do you perceive the information that is fed to you? What feelings arise? Are they aligned with your beliefs? Um, Things of that nature. So this also has you reflecting on like, what is your perception? What are your beliefs and attitudes about the world or about a particular situation? And also understanding that your perception influences your choices. And this all can lead into, well, how can I start to recognize like, what's my perception? How is this intertwined with cognitive dissonance? And it's very important to understand that your perception of the world is influenced by certain things such as, the trauma that you've been through, socialization or social constructs, your environment that you grew up in or you currently live in, your culture norms, the music that you listen to, and the media, such as like the news or the social media that you're constantly watching. This has an effect on how you perceive and move throughout the world. And if something was to arise, this also influences if you have cognitive dissonance about something. So, for example, say if you see something on social media that basically is stating um, something that you don't, agree with, and it starts to make you question yourself or doubt yourself, and now you start to waver. This the perception of what you just saw influence your thoughts, and then it influence, well, do I believe in this, do I not believe in this, so on and so forth. So basically, it's very important to be strong within your beliefs, your thoughts, your values, so when you are fed with information, you're able to decipher, like, okay, does this align with me, or does this not align with me? And, sometimes I bring up trauma because sometimes we can be so used to thinking a certain way and having our thoughts be a certain way, but it's not congruent to how we developed and our true values. So it's important to maybe discover some of the feelings that arise when you have this incongruent state and try to be more consistent within your thoughts, your values, and start to, as you develop or as you continue to, self reflect on your decision making, start to see how those things can play a part. Um, so the big question now is, how can we create balance and start to be more aware of the cognitive dissonance that we may have? Step one, I said this many times, probably will say it again, is that your mindset is key. We have a lot of power within just the way we think about things on a day-to-day basis. And I can even give you like an example of something called the placebo effect. I don't know if I talked about this before, but I'm gonna talk about it again. Is basically like when a person is administered something that's like a look-alike or a certain treatment, and so the person's saying, oh, I'm getting a treatment, I'm getting better, I'm doing well. And then sometimes with the placebo effect, these people can actually improve based off the treatment. And sometimes in psychological studies, the placebo effect is used to see if the real treatment is actually working. So just off of people thinking that they're getting a treatment, that actually sometimes in certain instances actually get better. So that's why your mindset is key, because once you start to shift your thinking towards something, which in turn helps to shift your perception towards it, which in turn helps to eliminate that cognitive dissonance, you can start to be more congruent within yourself. And this is a key throughout the episode, is how can we reach consistency throughout our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and how can we reach overall congruence within ourselves. As well as sometimes you might be saying, well, Summer, like trying to switch my mindset or something is challenging. And I concur, like I agree that, trying to switch a mindset of, being negative towards something to being positive towards something does take a lot of force. It does take a lot of trying to, okay, how can I perceive the situation differently? How can I evaluate something that I'm upset about differently? And, this can be used in a lot of different um, situations. Forgiving people as one, sometimes it's gonna be so hard to like process through those emotions and let it go, but sometimes it actually is helpful to sit back and realize, what can I learn from this? What can I understand from this situation? What did the other person, what was their mindset? What, based off of the behaviors and things that they said, things that they did, and just going and understanding that people have their own different perceptions on reality, that some, like, for a certain amount of years is created for them, but then they have to be the ones, or they have the choice to be the ones to start to create that own perception reality for themselves. So this leads me back into evaluating your effort towards change. That's another key instance of trying to create more balance within this cognitive dissonance. Um, your effort towards change or that desire is just going to push you through wanting to change that mindset, wanting to find that congruency within yourselves and within yourself. And then sometimes you have to realize, well, if I'm not having that inner motivation, what can I do to help me get back to the place I want to be? Or what can I do for me to strive to be in that place that I want to be? Do I need to, you know, talk with a family member or a friend? Do I need to, listen to a podcast? Do I need to do more research on something? Do I need to create a plan? Do I need to speak more positively to myself? Do I need to start to go to therapy? Do I need to look and do self reflection? Do I need to become more self aware? Like, these are different solutions. In cognitive dissonance, why I stated this earlier, is that people always have the motivation to want to um, change and want to not feel this incongruence. But sometimes when those defense mechanisms arise, or when people start to detach from their thoughts and their behaviors and start to just say, I don't care, start to detach their feelings, this still causes that psychological tension, and that still can be very harmful. And then this can also affect the person's effort to want to change. And then once you start to build in those habits, that becomes habitual for you, it takes a lot of different effort to, you know overcome that and want to improve from that. So the when you first can recognize it, then you can start being more solution focused. And I really want to, hone in that it's very important to be solution focused. Even these past couple months, I went into just a different, trying to figure out, my new environment, trying to figure out my new routine. And at first, it was a challenge trying to get used to everything. I mean, I'm still trying to adjust, but still try to get used to everything and try to, you know, um, just become more comfortable and get, you know, just make myself feel at home, feel like at a community. And when I didn't have that right away, it kind of caused like, like just feelings of loneliness. And I think that's like completely normal. I think, as humans, we go through phases. So, but I knew that if I stayed in that state for too long, that wouldn't be helpful for me. I wouldn't have found peace or found joy in the situation. So it's important to, when you're placed in a certain uncomfortability, it's important to figure out, what are my beliefs, what are my values, what are my true thoughts, what are my desires towards where I want to be. And then creating a system or creating a plan, or doing what you believe is best for you to reach your state of congruence. Um, and I think that's really important. And this leads me to my third thought of how can we reach balance or congruence, is truly understanding your core values and beliefs. Growing up, our parents typically teach us this. And as we become an adult, or, become like older in our adult years, we have to start recognizing our how does our values and our beliefs influence how we make decisions. How has this led to certain consequences within our lives? so on and so forth. So it can be kind of a challenge to recognize, what are my things that I can negotiate on versus what are things I can't negotiate on. What are the things that I'm going to stand firm on? This is part of my foundation as a human being versus the things that I just can't do. I'm trying to think of an example for me. Because core values and core beliefs are just like they're very personal to a person. I guess one thing for me that is a belief that I've had since I was a kid was to be successful. Like I was always like determined to reach a certain level of success within life. So I was always, ambitious. Sometimes, it hasn't been the easy linear process, but this has been a core value of mine to be ambitious and always push myself um, to reach success, as an example. So you have to, figure out, what you truly want out of life. What is your purpose? One of the things that you can't negotiate, and this will in turn help you develop your core values and beliefs over time. And I think it's important to do this because, like I was saying earlier, this now impacts how you have interpersonal relationships with other people. Because if you're at a state of incongruence, not understanding your core beliefs and core values, then you can be influenced by other people by their own core beliefs and core values. And then in turn, that incongruence continues to build. And you might even develop some resentment towards the other person because you realize, you know what, I actually didn't believe it that way, but I also didn't know where I truly stood on. Like my foundation wasn't strong enough. So then you end up just relying on that other person. And then you're like, dang, well, I wish I would have done this better. So instead of, being in a regretful stance, it's better to, even if you did go through a situation like that, I think as humans we all have, then it's good to reflect on understanding, okay, in my next situation, in my next friendship, in my next relationship, in my next, interpersonal relationship, or even just developing relationships, relationships evolved. What are my core values? What are my core beliefs? What's my foundation? And just stay true to that. So I really encourage you to evaluate that. And then also, I think we talked about this before, but not saying can't within your vocabulary. I yeah, change all that you can't to I will. Even if it's an intrusive thought, just I will do that, or find a way around it, because in life there's so much room to find a solution. So let's be more solution focused and problem focused. I mean, it's okay to dwell on the problem and validate your emotions, go through the process, but eventually we cannot make that a habit and come with a solution to improve and reach our overall goal. And when negative situations do arise, this is my last point on being congruent, is to switch it to learning experiences. I always kind of look at life as, okay, if I made a mistake, how can I improve and become better? For example, so I'm in a mental health counseling program, and one thing that we have to do is something called role playing. And the first few weeks, I was struggling. Like every single time, my heart was beating out my chest. I was so anxious. I just tried to make sure I wanted to get every skill right. And then today, I was like, I'm going to take a different approach. Because at my last time, I did better. I did try to do breathing exercises, but when there's also people in the role play that watch you and give you critiques, so it's kind of hard to, do these 1, 2, 3 breathing exercises with everybody watching you. So what I decided to do was, I'm going to rely on thinking positive and just being confident within myself. As well as, just trying to tell myself and envision myself of succeeding within um, the role play after it happened. So I was like, I just kept telling myself, I am confident, I'm going to do well, I'm going to do good. I just kept like repeating that to myself. And when I got to doing it, I realized, dang, I don't have the heartbeat as I did in the first 3 times that I did this. I'm actually comfortable. This is coming natural to me. So that's just a quick example of like how I was able to like really change my perception and change my thinking and my mindset towards a situation so I wouldn't be so overwhelmed. And that helped me do well. That helped me excel, and that also helped me to like really see my true potential. And I think that's very important. So yeah, when negative situations arise, like how I was making the mistakes in the beginning, switch it to learning experiences on how I can get better, how you can continue to mold and tune the best version of you. And I haven't did this in a while, but we're about to wrap up. But I actually have a challenge for you this week. So my challenge for you, and I talked about it throughout the episode, is to list 3 core values for yourself, and also list 3 ways that you can become congruent towards these values. Or if you are at a place of congruence, it's good to just reflect on how you got there. So if a situation does arise, you can process and figure out, well, these are my values, so this is what I'm going to do. For example, core values can just go through like things that like your religious or spiritual beliefs, your belief towards family, how you view, certain things within your living situation, like things that you hold dear to you. And then listing 3 ways that you have been congruent. Or if you've noticed, maybe you have some cognitive dissonance going on, um, listing ways of how you can become more congruent. How can you have your thoughts align with your behaviors and your feelings? And I'm gonna give you an example as well. So, say if a person um, comes in and they're like, I love myself, and you say, okay, and then they start talking about how they have a lot of negative self-talk and how they're constantly been involved in toxic relationships, and they're always just complaining, and they don't really have a great attitude or outlook towards life. So then, something that you could challenge this person to do would be, okay, well, what's truly important to you? What's something that um you can say, or something that you can list, or something that you can acknowledge that you hold as a treasure towards you. And then based off of what they say, you can start creating solutions to becoming more, for that person becoming more aligned with loving themselves. So instead of having that negative self-talk, how can we lead to more positive self-talk? Instead of being constantly involved in toxic relationships, how can we learn from those situations to develop healthier ones? Or instead of constantly complaining, how can we start to have more appreciation towards what we have and what we can do and what we have control over, and also becoming more solution focused. So that's just an example. I challenge you to do it. If you have the time, great. If not, I understand. But we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I'll ask you the 3 questions I asked you in the beginning. So question 1, what are your core values? Question 2, how has your life experiences influenced how you think about things? And question 3, what is your mindset towards life? And we're going to wrap up with this quote. If you don't like something, change it. And if you can't change it, change how you think about it. By Mary E. So if you're currently in a situation where you're feeling incongruent, you don't like it, change it. And if you can't change it, because we only have control over ourselves, and control over how we perceive things, then change how you think about it. Change the perception towards whatever is bringing you down. So I hope you guys have a wonderful Wellness Wednesday. I really encourage you to do something this week to take care of yourself and bring you joy. And that brings you joy. All right, have a great one.